The acting ability would carry over where the dumb blonde dropped off.
Before she could reinvent herself as Marilyn, she had to come to terms with herself as Norma Jean. Although she was living her dream as a movie star, it wasn't enough. She felt something was missing. Something that even the adoration of millions of fans around the world could not fulfill.
The best picture this year will also be the funniest.
Good night, sugar. Good night, honey. You stay here as long as you like. You're not giving yourself a chance. Don't fight it.
At the age of 28, Marilyn Monroe was a household name. Her photographs and blonde bombshell movie roles were etched into the American psyche. Ironically, her career was built on an image she created, but no longer enjoyed.
Marilyn hated only being that sexual woman. That was the act. It was wonderful. And that was the act she had hostility towards. Because she wanted to be more.
Marilyn desperately wanted to be seen as a serious actress. She vowed not to make another movie unless it was on her terms. And although it had been over a year since she'd made her last film, the crowds of fans in New York were a constant reminder of their loyalty. In 1956, she returned to Hollywood to star in the screen adaptation of Bus Stop, directed by Joshua Logan, a chance for Marilyn to shine as an actress. It was the story of a saloon singer bullied into a marriage which shatters her dreams of a career in Hollywood.
She'd gone to the actor's studio to learn how to use her real emotions. So, not to represent things, but to actually experience things. And she showed that she could do it, and the results were there with Bus Stop and Some Like It Hot particularly. I think those were two of her best films.
Marilyn's character in Bus Stop brought to life an emotional depth and poignancy unlike any of her previous films. But the role she craved to play was the real-life part of a wife and mother. Marilyn once said hearing the words, "I love you," meant more to her than if 1,000 critics were to tell her she was a great actress. In 1956, she would hear those words and find love again with the acclaimed playwright, Arthur Miller.
She listened to him and watched him as if he was the only person in the world. And my husband said, "How could you not fall in love with someone who listens to you like that?"
Marilyn said of Arthur Miller that this was the first time she really felt in love. She said he was going to make her life different, better, a lot better. In July of 1956, the beauty wed the brain, and the couple seemed to be a perfect complement to one another. Arthur, she said, was the only brain who liked me for me. If I was nothing but a dumb blonde, he wouldn't have married me, would he? Her playwright husband fulfilled Marilyn's desire to be with a man of accomplishment, and she helped the outwardly taciturn playwright laugh.
I never knew him to be that free and loose and easy and enjoying of life as when he was with her, when the times were good with her, you know. She seemed to be able to just make him giddy. It was very charming and nice to be with him those times. He looked different. He just was like a man in love.
If having a husband was one wish, having a child was another. She had hoped that a child would satisfy her desire for unconditional love, something she'd been searching for all her life.
When I went into the service, she begged me to let her have a child. I told her that she was too young and it would be too much trouble. So we did away with the thought of having children until she was older.
She wanted children desperately. She was unfulfilled as a woman and a mother. I mean, if that's something that you want, that's a very sad thing not to have that.
Marilyn and Arthur nearly realized her treasured dream. She became pregnant twice, but sadly was unable to bring either one to term. For the woman who appeared to have so much in life, the fact was she had none of of what she really wanted.
I visited her in the hospital, and I remember going into her room, and there was just a little night light on. Arthur was sitting in a chair next to her, holding her hand. She lost a baby boy.
Marilyn's failed pregnancies were the beginning of a downward spiral. She suffered increasingly from mental and emotional disturbances, marked by erratic behavior. Her marriage to Arthur Miller deteriorated and eventually broke down. In January 1961, at the age of 34, she divorced her third husband. Marilyn was as sad as any bride who saw a dream turn to dust. In the midst of their breakup, Arthur had written The Misfits for Marilyn. It would be the last movie she would ever complete. Some even blamed her when her co-star Clark Gable died of a heart attack after the movie wrapped. The rumors devastated her. Marilyn's grip on reality slipped, and she ended up hospitalized in a New York clinic for the mentally ill. For a woman who has had a family history of mental illness, it was a frightening episode.
Being locked up at Payne Whitney Psychiatric Clinic had to be so threatening because her mother had been institutionalized for most of her life. So when the doors were locked, that had to be a paramount moment to her.
In a desperate bid to find some semblance of sanity, Marilyn planned to take it easy. She would pace herself at work on her next film. Something's got to give. But it was the one film Marilyn never finished. At the age of 36, Marilyn Monroe's world was falling apart. She was facing the end of the prime of her movie career. No longer would she be the hot young starlet. There were rumors of alcohol abuse, outbursts of temper, and constantly showing up late on the set. Ever insecure about her abilities, the studios with whom she battled were all set to let her know how easily she could be replaced.
In those days, you know, when you were starting to look at 30, you figured it was going to be over soon. You didn't last very long. And 30 was sort of the first nail in the coffin. And then there were maybe only 4 or 5 more nails, and that was it. 35, 36. So I was 19, so they were using that to threaten her.
1962 took on grand significance in Marilyn's life. She was recovering from her third divorce, 2 miscarriages, and a nervous breakdown. Any one of those would shake up a more solid soul. For Marilyn, it was practically disabling. To escape, she turned to work. She buried herself in Something's Gotta Give. But first, she took time out from her 30th film to appear in a celebration of President Kennedy's birthday.
She comes into New York to sing Happy Birthday to the President of the United States. Goes to a rehearsal at Madison Square Garden. Returns from the rehearsal, and that night returns to the garden to sing, and Marilyn shimmered up onto the stage. Absolutely incredible looking.
She sang Happy Birthday. You know, that famous rendition of Happy Birthday to You at Madison Square Garden. Anyway, apparently she was given some tickets for the dinner and for the event and everything, and she invited my husband and me, and my dad was her date. And then afterwards, they went over to the presidential suite at the Waldorf, and she brought Dad along, and he stayed and met the president and met Bobby and met the vice president, Lyndon Johnson, and had a wonderful time.
Although she wowed the president and his crowd, she was not greeted with the same enthusiasm back on the set of her current movie project. She was summarily fired from Something's Gotta Give. The studio said her performance was unacceptable, though Marilyn fans and friends and critics who saw it later disagreed.
That footage has all this ravishing stuff of her swimming nude, and I think she would have probably made a great picture out of something she didn't even much want to do.
Marilyn Monroe never had a chance to make another movie. The woman who defined youth, glamour, and sensuality.